Dad died December 1st, 2003. He had been ill for a month, 4 weeks actually. Terry had come as soon as he heard that he had had a very serious heart attack and was in bad shape, and he had left before Dad died.
When I first arrived, he saw me and recognized me, and I think most of the time after that he was just caught up in his own feelings for himself, and he really was very unhappy.
One of the saddest things he ever said to me was, "My life is over, but I'm still alive."
According to Dad's wishes, he was cremated, and I had the ashes delivered to me in a box about the size of a shoebox.
And I know that she wanted to scatter the ashes, and I think she asked me where I thought would be a good place.
Our plan was to follow what Dad had said. He wanted his ashes scattered in the river. Scott had taken him down there a number of times for picnics and things.
I would get a couple of chairs and put them by the water, and we would go sit, and he loved to do that and look at the river.
I guess it was a year later when Terry came for his visits, when he was coming almost once a year then, but it had snowed. There had been a terrific snowstorm that year, and we couldn't get near the river.
It was a crappy day, which is typical for Philly. It was cold. I remember the picture. We were very rugged up. I remember the four of us going up there.
And nobody was on that bridge. It was just terrible weather. Nobody was out. We got the ashes, went on one of the bridges across the Schuylkill River.
That's the Falls Bridge. It's about 4 miles north of Center City on the Schuylkill River. I figured that would be a good place to scatter Dad's ashes.
We each took turns scattering the ashes into the river. And we were all thinking about Dad, and the looks on your faces. Really was a very meaningful time. It really was.
3 different guys that all were living different lives in different ways, one in another country, but he had brought us all back together again. And I knew that was important for my mom, and it was important for me.
So I think of it as capturing a serious moment in our lives.
She wanted us all to be able to sort of say goodbye to Dad all at the same time, a sort of a last family thing.
And I was glad that Terry was there, that we had waited.
We waited for her to decide that it was time to do it. And clearly she wasn't ready to completely let go, which was, you know, fine. We were doing it for her. That's what I thought, not for us.
And she always talks about how the most important things in her life are her sons.
And I'm glad we did what we did, because it was a nice memorials that we gave.
Each of us took a turn scattering some of the ashes. I remember saying goodbye, and I was thinking, you know, goodbye.
Mom wanted to keep some of it, not throw it all over. That made an impression on me.
What I remember most about that day on the bridge was that our family was together. My mom and my 2 brothers, and it felt like my dad was there too.
I think we were all happy to do it, and we were all glad to be there, but it was kind of a very sad day.
It was sad. I mean, it was very, very sad. But it captured a very important moment in my life, and I think in Dad's life.
And Dad said, well, death is a part of life, but he understood it and he believed it, and that he accepted it. And that's pretty remarkable.
I think you all had different feelings about Dad. Scott told me later that it was one of the 2 worst experiences of his life was when Dad died. Terry, I thought of him more as a taskmaster. I think he was very sad at Dad dying, of course, but he had different feelings.
He wasn't a great dad for me, but he was a great dad for his other sons, I think. Certainly, Scott got a hell of a lot out of every aspect of their relationship.
I think he was very proud of the fact that I became a journalist as he was, but I also know that he was very happy with Terry and David for the jobs that they were in too.
I thought, I don't want to be my dad's age and not have children, and that was a gift.
And I know you were terribly affected. You just worshiped your dad. You've been quoting him ever since.
Because I was always quick to talk and wasn't very patient, he would say, just count to 1.
I think he had a terrific influence on all 3 of you. He was a unique father, very involved, unlike most fathers of that generation. He helped take care of all of you when you were babies. He changed diapers. Frequently, he would get up in the middle of the night to take one of the feedings when you were babies. Fathers didn't do things like that.
After I got married, I couldn't remember what life was like before I was married. And after we had children, I used to say, I couldn't remember what life was like before we had children.
You know, we always talk about the fact that the time that my father spent in Kalinga were the happiest years of his life. He worked 7 days a week, but he loved it.
He just loved being able to write his editorials every week. That was the magic day for him.
I remember one Thanksgiving we had, I think the Swansons came and maybe Ketta and Ted and their kids. And we were all waiting for Dad to come home. He worked all day Thanksgiving, and finally he came home. He was there all the time.
He got tremendous enjoyment out of it. As he put it, what he was put on earth to do.
It was the high point of my life, where the family was all together. We worked together, we lived together. The newspaper was my real life, what I've always wanted to do. And the kids used to fight in the back.
You'd be sweeping the floor, we would be inserting papers, and we would be shouting at each other. He would come back to tell us to be quiet.
Retrospect, it was all part of the joy of living for the five of us together in Kalinga.
What I remember most about the Flanders was us sitting around the table, and it was good company. It was good company.
Part of it is, you know, Dad was away, you know, he was at work, and he'd come home and he would have a limited amount of time where he could talk to us all at the same time.
Dad would talk about politics or philosophy or ethics or history and tell us all the meaning of all these things.
And he did give lectures, which I saw as he's providing his wisdom.
And bantering and lots of conversation, and often spurred by my father, the reporter, who wanted to make sure that we were all thinking clearly about things.
He wasn't asking because he wanted us to talk or he wanted us to give information. I think he was very interested in it.
I think we carry on the Flander tradition of continuing to think and maybe just being curious, which is what my father taught me, was how to be curious.
It's the same kind of pedantic arguing or back and forth that we still have between the three of us whenever we're in the same room, or what we do to other people when we're telling them everything we know about a topic.
Scott, who wrote my dad's obituary, he said, some fathers teach their kids how to play sports, some fathers teach their kids how to hunt and fish, and our father taught us how to think.